Let's see. It's going to be a super fun lecture tonight, but we always start with a little bit of science. We ask every week this year, how many people have been to one of these lectures before?
4 years.
4 years. How many years?
For 4 years.
4 years. How many people have been here more than 4 years ago? How many people have been here 10 years ago? 1. So this is our 10th anniversary. And we always have aprons. So, you haven't seen them before? Come on. What? What? You haven't seen these? All the equations. All the equations. Whoa. You got to come. Well, we have anniversary aprons now, new aprons. And, you know, you get a chance to win them. We always have a quiz. But before I start with that, Pia is going to run a trip to the center of haute cuisine in South America, in Lima, Peru. Central, we've had Virgilio and Malena also, right? They've come and lectured here. And you can go with Pia to this trip. You can go all kinds of other cool places. Does it say, yeah? Cuzco, Machu Picchu, Amazon. Very cool. I'm jealous of her already. You don't even have to be a Harvard alum to go. You still can go. So sign up. I'm signing up. So we have a quiz. You get to win. Okay, we have 3 questions. And we have 2 older aprons and 2 newer aprons. So the first 2 people can choose which they want. Last week, it's always based on last week. How many people were here last week? Lots of people, good. So David Zilber and Jason White from NOMA were here. And they made a bunch of things. They were talking about Pia's favorite thing, which is fermentation. And what are 3 ways fermenters can control which microbes? Don't put your hands up yet, because you got to have 3 ways when you put your hands up. Go for it. No, you had your hand up. I saw. Yeah, you. Speak up. Speak up. Oxygen level, acidity level, and temperature. Pia, is that correct?
Yes.
Great. What apron do you want? Good. See. Very good. Okay, next question. What's this? Sprinkling something on something. You have your hand really high. Koji on barley. Whoops. Even I know that one's incorrect. Anybody else? On this side. At the very back. Barley. Okay. Pia says you're right. Which apron do you want?
The old one.
Okay, the next person doesn't have a choice. Last quiz question. What's this? You're waving your hand so hard, you must know.
It's a mold spore.
Yes? I'm listening. Only one other person. You.
Canidia of aspergillus.
Excellent. You know, we have one apron left, and you came close, so I'll give it to you nevertheless. Is that all right, Pia? Okay, so today we're going to hear a lot about texture. And texture is a lot about what we're going to discuss in our science part of the class this week. So what is texture? Texture is the way food feels as opposed to taste. Taste is really important. Smell is really important. Taste and smell are combined, but texture is how the food feels to your mouth. And there's a variety of ways of thinking about it. There's something that's really rock solid, like rock candy. Something that's squishy, that's chewy. This is a steak. We'll discuss that in class because we'll cook steaks to different amounts. A well-done steak compared to a rare steak has a different texture, has a different mouthfeel. Jell-O. Jell-O is 90 to 95% water. Nevertheless, it behaves as a solid. We'll discuss that eventually. So this is a network. This is a bunch of crystals. We won't really discuss too much about that. Then there's other kinds of things. Well, actually, I think, are you going to talk about your dough? So Janice will talk about something, not exactly like this, but this is bread dough. This is baked bread. Now, what's interesting about this? If I take this bread dough and I roll it up into a circle, but then I come back a few hours later, it spreads. So it's clearly a solid, but it also flows, sort of like a liquid. And one of the things that we'll see a lot of today is texture and how it behaves, an intermediate between a liquid and a solid. And in fact, understanding from a really good scientific point of view what texture is, what the elasticity is, what the viscosity is, what the general behavior of that is something that we have a lot of ways of measuring, but actually correlating it with the way it really feels to your mouth is still a challenge. People still work hard at trying to understand what the right measurement is to give you, to quantify the kind of mouthfeel that you have. So I'm sure Janice will tell you exactly what texture is. We try to measure it quantitatively, and it's actually difficult. Even for the food industry, it's still a major source of research. So how can we understand that from a more microscopic point of view? Here are some simulations. I may have showed some of these before, but this is a solid, this is a liquid. I'll just play them. You can see what happens. The liquid in the molecules can move over one another. Sometimes they evaporate, there's a fluid, but they're basically a fluid, whereas a solid, the molecules are stationary. They can't move over one another. And we can understand the behavior of a solid, and many things have solid-like behavior. Many things have liquid-like behavior. A solid, you can understand in a very simple way. If I put a force, try and change the shape of a solid, that's what happens. All the molecules move with respect to one another. They actually change their angle with respect to one another, and just a little bit, their separation. So I can think of it in a very simple way. If these are two molecules, I can think of it, what I'm doing is I'm changing the angle, and I'm changing the distance just a little bit, and there's like a spring in between them. And the stronger the spring is, the more rigid the material is. And we call that the elastic modulus, or the elasticity of a material. And we can understand then the difference between a solid and a fluid. If I start shearing this, if I put a force here, if it's a fluid, all the molecules can move over one another. If it's a solid, they will stay in their same position. But the important thing is that all materials have both a liquid and a solid-like character. So here's a person walking through water, and you know walking through water is more difficult than walking through through air, but it gets more and more difficult. It gets more and more difficult the faster you walk. And you know that if you try and run through water, it's harder than to walk through water. It takes more force. In fact, water can behave like a solid. You think water is just like a viscous fluid, but jump into it from a very high height. It's solid. It can be rock solid. So it depends on the time constant. And so the way we describe that, one way of describing it is by talking about the viscosity, how it flows. Normally, water, you think, has a certain fixed viscosity, but really, it depends on the time. And so what we can think of it as it depends on some elastic modulus. That's what it behaves like if you go really rapidly. If you fall from a bridge onto water, that's the elastic constant of the water. But as it flows, there's some relaxation time. That's how the molecules flow over one another. And so the viscosity is just the product of those two. And we can actually describe that, and that gives us our equation of the week. Those of you who haven't been here before know that we have to clap for equations when we have them. So actually, I found this equation. I wanted to find an equation that was appropriate for what Janice will talk about. And she talks about something that has both elastic and fluid behavior. And so this is something that sort of shows the combination of the two. And we can talk about their understanding something about their nature. Janice also is going to do a lot of temperature-dependent stuff. And I thought I would just show how different materials have different temperatures, a different melting temperature. So Daniel prepared some different types of fats here. This is shortening. Shortening. This is heated up to 37 degrees. What is that? Solid. Let's take another one. Cocoa butter. We're going to hear a lot about that. Solid or liquid? 37. Solid, liquid, solid. She doesn't know. It's liquid. Liquid. So what do you have to do if you use cocoa butter and you want to handle it in your hand? Think about that. Homework problem. Here's butter. Liquid. Notice what's on the bottom. It's some solids, right? It's separated. Okay, so you can control, by mixing these things, you can control the melting temperature. Here's just a summary of the different melting temperatures. And so cocoa butter at 37 is a liquid. This is the melting temperature. Olive oil is always a liquid. Coconut, same, unless you cool it down. Shortening, it melts at 48 degrees. Beeswax, we'll also hear a little about beeswax, that melts at a much higher temperature. And just by mixing these together, you can control the temperature at which things melt. And again, Janice will use that. And with that, let me introduce Janice Wong. She has a dessert bar in Singapore. I was visiting there, and I told some friends of mine that she was coming to Harvard to lecture, and they all wanted to go and eat at her dessert bar, which we did. It's great. And I asked what she would like to be introduced as, and she said, an Imagineer. So I give you the Imagineer.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. First time in Boston. So again, really, really excited. The theme today, I wanted something not to do with chocolate, not to do with sugar, not to do with all that stuff, because it's so related. I think what we do is so different, and today's topic is really about pushing the boundary, about imagination and innovation. So the tagline I always carry with me is "Your world is your imagination." I basically went blind for 3 days, and that was really the tagline that I got out of the 72 hours of blindness. Really pushing my imagination to see the world as I would like to see it, black or white, colorful, different textures, different types of shapes and forms, and it's a beautiful world. And with that, you can really take it to all your disciplines, whether you're a chef or whether you're in anything. So a little bit of introduction so that you can kind of understand the whole journey of why we're creating things like chocolate crayons or painting our tables with chocolate or painting the walls in marshmallow. Today is going to be fun because at the end of the class, end of the workshop, we're actually going to be passing around some chocolates, and then we'll be painting with chocolate and putting lollipop sticks all over the small painting. So, started 2 a.m. dessert bar at the age of 24, 2007, and why I'm showing this slide is because when I first started, I wanted to put sweet experiences on a plate. And with that, an open concept, really wanted to engage with customers, talk to them, show you how we make things. And the fear of basically not having the fear of losing was with me throughout. I'm a sports person. And basically, I really wanted to continue to innovate. And the only way to do that is to continue sharing. So when I had my first sharing session with Pia, we were just talking about aerated stuff. And I showed her a photo and then gave her recipes. But I mean, the whole thing was about sharing, constant sharing. And so the dessert bar was set out, open concept. You could see everything. And then I decided, okay, it needs a little bit more because food is about 5 senses. It's all about touching and feeling, visual as well. So we started putting mediums into the tables. So we started painting the tables in chocolate and putting a glass top over it. You change it every season. It's like fashion, and that whole sense of edible art, the whole sense of dining is very different. So then opened a lab 4 years later, decided to put a lot of resources back into the lab. And with that, we really focus on what really is food and science. I never studied science, but, always engage with it. And it's so important to create knowing how it works and what the ingredients are. So when I started to do desserts, I started to train in cordon bleu and all that stuff, and basically, you learn all the classic recipes. But that wasn't enough to innovate. I mean, it was great, you need that, but to innovate, you really need to understand what the sugar does, what the flour does, and cream and so on. And so with that, we started doing desserts on a plate. I wanted to show you this recipe. So this was in 2014. 2014? Yeah, thereabouts, or 2012. But the basic of this was when I started to do a dessert, these were all very classic. I mean, you take your microwave sponges, they were done fondant and all that stuff was done years and years ago. To create new textures, you really got to put yourself into the unknown. And that's always how we try our best to do something different. And it's not easy because when I want to make curry, for example, and I tried that, I tried to make a pot of stew of curry, and the knowledge of, putting coconut cream or putting bay leaves into the curry or turmeric, you have that knowledge of what it is to make it better. And to kind of unlearn, that is where I would like to explore that with you today, to be able to unlearn to learn. And so with this dessert, I wanted to make a mousse texture that was very light, and we started adding water into our dessert. This was the turning point of our time when we were really doing a lot of desserts with water instead of cream and mousses. And I think this is really important because, in terms of creating desserts, we were always about, whipping cream, floating mousse, gelatins and stuff. And this was where we decided, okay, let's see all the breakdown of how we can make a mousse, how we can make this texture, light texture, aerated, without cream, without the usual stuff like gelatin as well. So taking a lot of raw ingredients, and the recipe for this is really about, a lot of water, blackcurrant puree, we've got yogurt inside there, basically no added sugar into this dessert, because I feel that that's a different topic altogether, no sugar in desserts. But yes, I use a lot of water into the desserts, and that's where it's really very, very challenging, but extremely pleasurable. So then, we did about 50 desserts a year, really exploring the unknown. And finally this year I decided, okay, we're gonna focus a lot more into confectioneries, which I'm gonna do with you today, which is super fun. Reason is because, with desserts, it's beautiful. You really get to play with a lot of textures, but again, you're serving it onto a plate. Okay, so this is a photo, 2011, I did my first edible art. Now the transition of that, where you really imagine your world to be completely different, creating new recipes, but it wasn't enough. It's never enough, I would say that. And for me, thinking different was so important. How do I think different every day? How do I manage that? What does it mean to really think different? How do you even start to think again? So I pose all these questions always. And I think the fundamental part is to create a structure on how you can think different. And that is really first to unlearn everything that I know, and then to really take all the emotional aspect of food. So food is very joyful, it's pleasure, it's about, the smell, the senses. And so to really take all these key emotional points, and with that, you're able to take it a step further to whether you create something on a plate, or this is a huge sugar wall with marshmallows. I wish I could do that with you today, but we're already doing something like, fun. And you can smell, I don't know, from here I can smell natural orange. I don't know where you can smell that, but I'll be passing that around as well. And so you can really smell that sweet smelling sensation, which is a part of your memory. So again, thinking different, how I can create that experience for you different. Instead of passing around chocolates one by one, when we started, I was very, kind of like, I felt very uneasy when, we kept doing this butler service and buffets and all that, and it wasn't changing. So as a game changer in the industry, I really wanted to push the boundary to see how we can change the style of food and buffets and experience. And this has all got to do in correlation with science. I think it's very important to understand that, and you'll see why later when we create these experiences. So this is a sugar wall, and it's in Singapore, so it's super high humidity. We managed to put marshmallows onto these sugar corals as well. And then the next point is the first edible art we did was a marshmallow ceiling. So a little bit about the story was I did my first book, Perfection and Imperfection, and I wanted 400 people, which is about 300 of you today. Well, I wanted 400 people to taste the book at the same time. And I think still today, I think we're the only ones to really see how we can do it. Very daring, very bold, very risky. Extremely risky to do something like that. As a patissier, you would never put food onto a non-food safe medium. And so the challenge was how could we overcome that? And first I layered the entire plywood with marshmallow first. And then after that, it took 2 days. We wore raincoats over our heads, and we did this because we wanted gravity, right? And we couldn't have done it this way, and usually you would do it that way. And the reason for this inspiration, it came so small, so short, was that when I was mixing marshmallows, and we were doing a photo shoot for the book, and the marshmallow with the whisk came up. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Marshmallows in a whisk, and it's like this beautiful texture of an icicle. And because it's so beautiful, and then we basically just pinch it, and then usually as chefs, you would taste your food. Then I'm like, why can't 400 people at the same time taste that? So it's really a spark of an idea that comes during the moment of creating it or innovating something. And I think this is a part of the imagination as well. So really imagining how, I could give an experience for 1,000 people. And I'll show you a video later how we managed to do that. Our art has grown a lot bigger these days, but this was the first art, 4 meters long. And basically, I put bergamot on the marshmallows and seaweed to give you that tantalizing experience. But today, I wanted to really talk about positive imagination. I mean, imagination can be also quite dangerous. Why? Because, you could really push it the other way. But I wanted to showcase, what is positive imagination? And for me, it's really about the purpose. Doing everything that we do needs a purpose. And the purpose is so simple. So today, what we do with the paints, the crayons, the chocolate bonbons that you eat, or the desserts, it's all about creating sweet memories for you. It's a new memory because, again, there's no reference to this. And I cannot explain how difficult it is that we have been doing this for the last 10 years without any reference point. We can't even find it on Google. How does chocolate and resin work together? So we've been experimenting with that. But 50% chocolate, 50% resin as a medium for artists. We just don't have that reference point. And but basically, because we don't have the reference point, we are actually doing that right now for the future. And the purpose is so sweet, so wonderful, and that really gives us the drive to continue to create even more textures. So that's how it is with everybody eating. So we had about 7-8 installations in this gallery, and I put all the recipes on the walls and the ceiling. So you had gummy panels, marshmallows, confectionaries everywhere, desserts. Yeah, it's wonderful because, everybody walks into the space. We give you this gallery experience, you curate it. And the idea is that, not only you have the same experience, but then you talk about it and the energy just goes super high up. So that's really amazing. Then it went up to even more. We started with 1 sugar coral. So as a patissier, sometimes you learn sugar art, you learn how to pull sugar. You have this great technique to basically just, make these small little sugar flowers or corals. So this is isomalt. We boil it to 180 degrees. We pour it over ice. And then it seizes, and it has this soft texture at first. And after that, we dry it for 2 days outside. We just dry it out, no air condition, basically just a nice temperature at about 25 degrees. And then it kind of turns matte. And over time, but because again, we keep all these art as well, which is of course quite challenging to document. When we keep this, over like 5-6 years, you break it open, it's like jade. I don't know if you've seen jade before, but it's like layers and layers of sugar. And I'm still trying to find out, okay, what happens? Why is it only in certain countries that this happens? And it's really mind-boggling. So again, science, food, art, a lot of correlation in it. But yeah, that's what I discovered. And I was like, oh, we got to keep this because, it's beautiful. After 3 years, it's a beautiful piece of art. So we started creating experiences for people, how you eat desserts and buffets. 5 senses. Again, beyond the 5 senses is about emotion. Food is really about emotion. I mean, you have it on a plate, you go and drink with friends, you eat, or you are made to work for your food. And that gives you a different emotion. Basically, you go into a space, you smell it, and then you have to climb up or you have to jump and fight for your food. And that again, always makes the trick with people being so excited for the food. And when you get really excited, the energy is so high up, when you taste the food, it's completely different. As if I give you the lollipop like this, and when you have to pull it up, I tell you, the difference in that sensation is just unimaginable. And again, for us, we always try to go beyond that experience. How can we think different? And just beyond this, I mean, this is done for like, I think 6, 7 years. People are still talking about it, but now we're thinking, okay, how can we create even better experiences for people by creating this crazy art installations, edible installations. So that's gummy. Later, I will talk about all the textures that we worked with so far. That's a gummy installation, and I'll talk about it because, we're talking about food and textures today. And gummy is a very interesting, it's really, really interesting texture because when you first cook with it, it's slimy and it boils to like, 145 degrees. And basically, when you set it, it sets in like maybe 3 minutes to 5 minutes and it sets to this pliable texture. So what I did was, okay, we poured it over an acrylic. And this is actually in a museum. Okay. So we did this in the museum. They let us have food in the museum. It's in Nagasaki, in Japan. So we did the world's largest sweet exhibition in Nagasaki. So we poured the gummy over, and then after like maybe 5 days or 6 days, the gummy becomes like hard because all the moisture has evaporated. But it doesn't break up. So it's very interesting because the gummy sticks to the acrylic. Usually, the science will tell you, okay, basically it's like sugar, right? It's all sugar. It's got glucose, it's got sugar, it's got water and gelatin. So what you do is you would be able to pry that out because it's on a very smooth surface. But what happens is because, we've been testing it for I think about 6, 7 years, and we realized that once you pour hot gummy onto the acrylic, somehow, it manages to stick on it, and it doesn't pry out, and it creates this really nice shiny surface, which doesn't dry out or turn matte. So this is like glass art. So again, we're constantly researching on this, and I've used a brush as well to kind of stroke with it, because when you use a brush, you're pulling it, and it gives you this beautiful texture. And when you shine a light, it's exactly like glass art. So it's really mind-boggling, but it's really cool. I mean, this is sugar. I'm going to talk more on chocolate today. But this is gummy art that we have done. And going back onto what we do for the guests, we basically stick all the edible gummies from whiskey gums to different types of gums, and then you peel it off and you eat it. So again, amazing dessert buffet for everybody. So tomorrow I'm going to give another lecture, and we're going to actually challenge the students to see what they can do with their final projects. And this is one thing that we're constantly researching on, UV and chocolate. So now I enter a space where I would like to let you know that how we actually create all these things was because of curiosity, the curiosity of the imagination. And that's so important, to be curious all the time. And so we actually, for me, it's like, okay, chocolate is chocolate, it's great, but what else can we do with it? Why is nobody putting, different mediums with chocolate and really pushing the boundary with that? I would love for more people to do it, especially even students at Harvard, but people here. But because we're alone, it's a little bit more difficult to really get more reference points. And so we started on this about 2014, 2015. We started really mixing UV with sugar, UV with chocolate, how it reacts, UV and cocoa butter. So we melt the cocoa butter. We pour edible UV paint into the cocoa butter with riboflavin. We also have natural UV, which we actually put soda water. That's a bit more difficult. So again, we were testing out a lot of different types of texture with it. So again, UV paint with cocoa butter, and then taking that to paint the molds, and then casting the chocolate into it, and it works. So this is painted outside, but recently we did another experiment in Spain, and now it's being showcased at Sublimotion in Ibiza. So we painted the molds, and this is, I don't think anyone has done this before, but again, it's so intriguing to understand how it works with UV and chocolate. Again, pushing the boundary with having a completely UV tunnel of sweets. When you go in and you're just, really welcome with this amazing color. And the idea is, you get to also find your food. So what we did was we basically put all the edibles around. They're in different shapes. And there will be people around to guide you, and you kind of got to hunt for your food. So it's amazing. I hope one day you all get to come for one of our exhibitions. So more of the UV experience. And then going into the next few slides is really on what we've done with food, pushing it to the next level with edible installations. So taking the imagination to the next level with putting lollipops on the ceiling where people can really enjoy it. And that's an installation for 3 years. So some things that you've seen in the past, it's like 3 months, some is 3 years. And why I brought this topic up is because, we're talking about textures of food. And not just in desserts, but for the art, we had to change the recipes. We basically had to either add more oil into the recipe. We had to adjust the chocolate recipe so that it lasts a bit longer, so that it's more, how would I say, it's softer, so that when we coat it, it doesn't crack and it travels a bit better. There's just so much into it that we had to really adjust. So this is a 3-year exhibition, and it's going to be up for 3 years. It's the first time again that we put lollipops on the wall against gravity for 3 years, chocolate lollipops. And so I'm very curious to see how it works as well with Four Seasons in Korea. So this is a chocolate theme park in Korea. And we took our paints and we started building like 4 meter tall, 4 meter long, like paint jars. Again, a wonderland of sweets, and imagination and colors as well. So we took chocolate bar and putting it like really, really big chocolate bars that you can touch as well. Okay, but before I show that ugly slide, I just want to explain a little bit. So today we were talking a lot about, art exhibitions and stuff, and it all looks fancy and great. But I wanted to show you the reality of it. So this is a 1 meter board. Usually how we paint, and you can see, today I will be passing this around, but it's hard now, but we'll be melting it. And so it really smells like natural orange. So this one, we don't add the oils into it. Basically, it's got really nice color texture. But for this one here, it's a 9 meter long wall. And so I had to really adjust the recipe and add quite a lot of oil. So you can see in this slide, it's like, it's a lot of work. But it's 6 hours compressed in 20 seconds. So we started painting. It's 200 kilos of chocolate. 200 kilos of chocolate for over 4 panels. This is only 1 panel, and that's me painting. But like I said, today I wanted it all messy because this is how we work, and this is how food really is. It's basically about touching, feeling, and it's not about again, we're always about organic creativity. So this is the project, and this is the magnitude of the wall. So that's 9 meters long of chocolate. Again, we managed to feed 100 over people at the same time. They came and they had so much to eat, and it just felt full. Like you feel like you can pull out endless amount of chocolate off the wall without feeling too guilty whether it's ever enough. And I think that's the beauty of it. And I hope one day in Boston we'll be able to do this. But this is now in Hong Kong. It's 2 months long. So far, so good. It ends on the 6th of November. But you can really see that later when I paint today, it's a small board, so we didn't need to put too much oil. The more we put, the longer it takes to dry, but it's beautiful when you paint with that. And basically today also, to talk about the textures of food is not just only for chefs, but it's also for artists and for the future. Again, no one is really doing mediums of food with art. And so that's why it's so important for us to document how we paint with sugar, how we paint with chocolate, and how we mix chocolate with inedibles so that artists can paint with it. So one of the next things that I'm working on is really chocolate and resin. So far we've done 50-50, and I feel like that's really still not enough. It turns too matte. We're trying now with 90% resin and 10% chocolate, but it's very expensive. Resin is very expensive. But for us, one of the students asked me today, what's the positive thing about, what's the good thing, the advantage of painting with chocolate? And straight away I said, it's the five senses. You can smell it. And that smell, it's really a happy feeling when you're painting it. So next, memories of taste. So later you taste some chocolates, and it's got Pop Rocks. It's a great memories of taste. But that's all the fun part. Now back to business. We do chocolate bonbons as well, and this is our confectionaries. Again, giving pleasure to people. When you open a box of chocolates, it's all about the shapes, the colors, the forms, and the memories. So this is the imagination of the Janice Wong brand. It's colorful, it's lively, and today I'm actually going to be making some of the paint and also adding it with beeswax. So I'll be drawing it and showing you actually a little secret of ours. And as you have seen the journey of, since 2007, and you've seen how we've basically transformed from having it into plates to feeding people. And there is no hard, fast rule on I never imagined that I'll be standing here today. I never imagined that I'll be painting 9-meter walls. And again, because of that organic creativity, because of the inspiration of culture, culture is my biggest inspiration. Talking to people, going to Peru, putting myself into the unknown, discovering hundreds of ingredients with Virgilo, for example, experimenting. And that's where, it always sparks different ideas all the time. Now next, I want to talk about play. So a lot of people say, how do you come up with chocolate crayons? So this is a box of crayons behind me, and I'll be passing it out very shortly. And so basically this is a box of crayons, and I was like, okay, I used to draw as a kid, not very well at all, didn't study art. But how come nobody ever create something you can draw, play, paint, and then eat it, right? See, the thing is, people are so scared of doing that because they're like, oh, kids will put it in their mouth, and then they might think the real crayons, they can eat it. But I'm like, no, it should be the reverse. You should create everything edible so that it's all food safe, so that if they really put it in their mouth, it's perfectly fine. So again, we're always challenged with, that part of mothers and the sales part. But when we created this, it was about making it personal. How can we draw and let you use your imagination using our products? So what I'm passing around is some crayons. There are 2 recipes, and you see the recipes on there. You feel free to take photos of the recipes. The first one is, the orange one is a crayon with chocolate, 100 grams of chocolate and 2 grams of beeswax, and it's your local Boston beeswax. So I went to the farmer's market, and then I just bought beeswax, and beeswax have different melting temperatures as well. So yes, usually 62 to 64, some melt at 68. So again, we are always challenged with different types of beeswax all around the globe. So with this art, I'm going to actually draw in front of you. Okay, so this is the beeswax that I bought from the Boston beeswax. It's really cheap, actually, and it smells great. So we'll pass this around as well. But I'm just gonna show it in front of the camera. So I think we'll turn it to the camera here. Okay. Okay, so maybe I'll get a volunteer. Nice. Okay, so we're gonna sketch, and then just to talk to you about the beeswax and the chocolate. So again, the curiosity of imagination. How does anyone start thinking of putting chocolate and beeswax together? The whole idea was because I wanted to draw with it. So I'll show you. Maybe I'll show you like chocolate block. Do we have a chocolate block? Maybe I'll just pry this open. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anyway, I pried this open. This is like pure chocolate, right? So you can see when we draw with it. Can you see how it rubs off? Can you see like all these little things coming out? So when we create something, it's always about, here, you can draw with this. So now you can just shade, yeah, go ahead, shade that. Okay. So when we create something, we always go with the first basic. I know I need to make crayon. I know what I need to make the crayon, but every time I do something, we have to go back to the basic, which is just seeing how it works with the texture. So then you have all these things coming out, and it's horrible. So we always think like, oh my goodness, if people were to play with this, no, the experience is terrible. So then we're gonna make it better for people. So then we're like, okay, we gotta basically take, beeswax because it's an emulsifier in itself, and it's a really nice texture as well. So basically when you start drawing with bees, this is the beeswax. It draws a little bit better, right? So you can draw with that. And then I'll take one of our crayon. Now this crayon of ours has lecithin. So it's a 3% beeswax recipe, but it has lecithin in it as well. And that also helps. It helps with the emulsification. And you can see the texture. So I would snap this in front of you. Can you hear that? Yeah. So texture for us is also very important. So this is also got that snap. But in chocolate, the snap is very important. And we got to achieve that. So if we give you this like super soft texture and we increase the amount of cacao butter into it or fat into it, you won't have that snap. And when you think of chocolate, there's a few things: snap, shine, taste, all these melting point as well. So chocolate has a nice tempered chocolate has a higher melting point. So we think about all these things that gives you that emotional aspect of a good chocolate, or rather a good experience of chocolate. So you painted this, now you try with this one. So the purple one that you see, and you can smell it as well, it has more beeswax in it. This recipe is got 100 grams of chocolate, but 10 grams of beeswax and 10 grams of olive oil. So you know how you make butter for your skin, like shea butter? You basically take wax and you take oil. And I only got that idea because this morning, this random guy came into the lab. His name is Arvid. And he started, he was making beeswax with oil. And I was like, hey, you're doing the same thing I'm doing, right? And then I'm like, oh, I want to use, that and put into chocolate as well. So he was making this butter for his skin. And then he was putting oil into it. And so I was like, all right, so I'm going to take 20 grams of that, 10 grams of beeswax, 10 grams of, the oil, and then I put 100 grams of that. So basically you can see how it's got less of the mess, but it's still got that mess. And it melts in your hand. It just melts in your hand a little bit more. So it's not as good. So again, it's great for your skin, if you really want to put it on your skin. It's great, but we always talk about, so let me show you this. So this is our final recipe, and you can see the drawer on this. So it's a great drawer, without leaving all that scrap. So, yeah. Then finally, we also talk about the experience, right, of people eating it. So when we you want to draw on this? Yeah, cool. So it's great, right?
It's just like a crayon.
It's just like a crayon. Awesome. Now, but having that, we haven't, I mean, there's so many challenges of ours because, I mean, now it's autumn, it's great, but when we go to like another country, like, I don't know, India or something, oh, it's challenging with different temperatures and stuff and how it travels. So, when you draw a painting, and then you can eat it. Well, we're like, great. So again, you know, we want to educate children. We want to educate people. Thank you very much. So basically, yeah, I mean, the canvas wasn't just enough. I mean, we really wanted to again enhance the experience. Like, okay, if you just draw with it, how could you make it personal? How can you make it a better experience for everybody? How can you make a painting and then give it to someone and tell them you can eat it? And it's all over Instagram. I get tagged sometimes, you know, once in a while. This morning I just got tagged. So anyway, this morning I just got tagged. This mother bought a box of crayons for her kid. And then she drew a really nice painting, and there was a face like eating it. And again, this was our purpose. Since 2007, when we started, the purpose was just to create sweet memories for everybody, and to create that experience for you and make it personal. So we continue to do that. I think years after years, we will still do this. But, you know, again, it's because of the simplicity of creating that purpose with the imagination. And that's how one simple product like this come about. But I want to talk a bit more about the crayon because we're talking about textures. So play. So you can see this video. It wasn't just crayons that we do. We try to do spin tops, but it's very hard to commercialize something like this. We actually take a drill bit and then we drill that. We actually see how we do the lines and everything. We can make molds out of it, but again, creating all these different types of play for the kids. You know, we try to make yo-yos and balloons and stuff. These are the fun stuff that we do, but because, you know, our company is small, but not too small anymore as well. We're small, we're able to really create these experiences, but we're also able to export into 7, 8 countries. So currently now we're in Singapore, Macau, Tokyo, London, and Korea. So we have the experience to be able to be challenged every day with different types of colorings that are permitted in different countries and the percentages, and that allows us to use the scientific knowledge to assist us with creating that. And I'll share a real life experience with you. So this year we're extremely challenged. We opened in Korea, we have 3 shops there, but we're not able to create, have our crayons in there because Korea has a 0.03% tolerance of colorings into a product. And so because of that, you know, we have to change all our colorants to natural using bead and so forth and flowers and stuff. And that really changes the composition of our product as well. And then comes Japan, where we don't have powders. You know, we don't have fat-soluble powders, colorants, and then we have to use everything with cocoa butter. So then again, it changes the entire recipe of our crayon. So in Japan, we just finished launching our crayons there, and it actually launches tomorrow for the first time in ANA Intercontinental Tokyo. And we had to change the recipe completely. I mean, we had so much fat content into the crayon that it doesn't draw as well. So again, constantly challenge with this, which is so fun. Oh, okay, so it's a video. So before I show you the video, just want to explain a little bit about the video that you see. So what you saw just now was crayons and paint. Okay, I'm going to show you what people like yourself and really people how they draw and how they paint with it. And I think you can relate to this a little bit more before I start painting. So let's watch this video. basically you can really see the young kids with a real artist. So we didn't know that he was going to show up. I mean, the artist came and he painted this. He added a lot of textures to it. We had group paintings. We didn't know that they could paint the Malayan in chocolate. So it's really cool. So the idea is, with this type of experience, again, it's really emotional. So people of all ages come together and then they paint and it's about fun. So what we do is really just having so much fun into what we do. But of course, like I said, it's also really risky. So these are the four types of mediums that we've used so far that we've really gone into. But each category has so much variation. And so with chocolate in itself, with the chocolate confectionaries of the chocolate toys that we do, whether it's the spin tops, crayons, Play-Doh, for example, that's one category. But I haven't even talked about fondant yet because, we really worked a lot with sugar as well, with our art. And then the types of gummies as well as marshmallows. So marshmallow is a very interesting texture as well. So same with the gummy, because it all has moisture. In each recipe, you can see there's all water. But what happens when the water evaporates and what happens when the marshmallow sets, it's really beautiful. So when you make a painting with marshmallow, and then it just really sets so hard and solid, and it turns matte. And you have this beautiful texture of marshmallow art. So again, you can really keep the food art for a long time. We just put a little spray coat of acrylic spray over it, or you can put resin over it as well, and it keeps really well. So so let's talk a little bit about chocolate because I want to just show you this because we're going to be making the Play-Doh, or rather passing around the Play-Doh. So one thing that I've been working on is really, chocolate Play-Doh. But it's difficult because I really have to add quite a bit of stuff in it just to give it texture and making it bouncy. What Play-Doh does is it's nice and pliable, it's not sticky to your hands, etc. So, oops. So going back onto textures of chocolate. So you've seen the composition of chocolate. Now this is the delicious stuff. I want to talk about the textures of chocolate. So we put them under a microscope. So this was a coral that I took a photo of in San Sebastian. And I saw this amazing texture and I was like, oh, we got to make that into food. So the first thing you do is to take a mousse with cream, chocolate. So we make a mousse, we whip it up, we freeze it, and then I took a chopstick and I punch holes. So this is like the basic thing that you would do to get the first initial texture and just to see how it breaks, how things work. Then I was like, okay, no, I really wanted to use water. And how could we do like 50% water, 50% chocolate? So I did that. Use 50% water, 50% chocolate, put into a siphon it, freeze it, and see how it just melts. Of course, I know it would just go into a puddle of water, but we wanted to see the texture and to taste it without any emulsifier, without any binding agent. So then we did that, and then I decided to do a recipe that is with 10% of egg whites. So I put it under a microscope, and this is kind of this is the texture of chocolate, water, egg whites. Okay, so we put it into a siphon, but you can see it's really nice organic. So I'm not showing today another photo of another texture that we did that there's a different technique that we're able to give you really, very even out bubbles. And that's using a vacuum machine to do that. But this is using a siphon, so you get this really nice natural organic texture. So this is the recipe, 45% chocolate, 45% water, 10% egg white. So you can really see, and this was in 2011, we were so curious to see how we could tackle mouthfeel with the mousse and the chocolate, how we could really tackle that and get a better texture. So we try to understand, okay, so water is not very good, right, for the mouthfeel. It's just gonna be sandy. And chocolate and water is like definitely no. But I always think, no, chocolate and water is good. It's really good. Like you can actually work with it. It's just how. I mean, it's just finding a way how to work chocolate and water together. So the dark spots are chocolate, and then the rest is water, and then outlining it is the egg whites. But surprisingly, when we mix it, so we basically put, we basically heat up the chocolate, and then we emulsify it with the water and egg white first. So water, egg white, the 10% egg white has egg white powder in the 10% as well. So we basically rehydrate the egg white powder in the water, and then we give this really nice texture, and then we basically make it like how you make a ganache as well. You heat up the liquid, and then you pour it over the chocolate. And you use a hand blender, and then you emulsify it. But because there's so much liquid in it, it emulsifies really well. And it's stabilized. It can be outside here for about 50 minutes. And the idea for this recipe was to create amazing textures for like gala dinners. You know, when we do gala dinners, it's like 500 packs in dessert, and we need it stable and pretty. So this was a pretty amazing recipe that we did. So this was another recipe that we tested with cream. This is a normal recipe with chocolate and whipped cream. And so you can really see the difference. So that's 40% chocolate, 35% cream, and 25% egg white. So you can see how it reacts. I mean, this is smooth. It's beautiful mouthfeel. It's very creamy, rich. You know, it's a little bit different. But, you know, the perception of that creaminess and that gives you this really heavy feeling as well. So when we created the chocolate water, a lot of people prefer that to this. And the reason why is because, you know, when you eat the second, third bite, you're having a lot more pleasure than when you eat this. Okay, so I have one more slide, and I think Dave is gonna come up. Yeah, so this is the chocolate paint. Yeah.
Janice showed me her paint, which she's gonna show you after this. And she showed me how you would heat it up, but she also showed me that to thin it, she added oil, which was room temperature, a liquid, but it was really rock solid. So I wondered what kind of texture it had. So I asked her, had you ever seen it under a microscope? And she said no. So we went over to the lab, and Perry Ellis, one of the people on my group, took some pictures. These are the scale bars. And this is what we had to do. It's very pasty, so if you squeeze it to look at it, it's just like a powder almost. So we did what you told us to do. We heated it up in the microwave and then smoothed it down and let it dry. And you can see that it's made up of all these crystals, and that's what gives it the solid-like behavior. It's a network of crystals. And if you look under higher magnification, you can see that it looks like inside the crystals, inside the solid, there's a little bit of an emulsion. And I think that's where the liquid is hidden and is solidified inside the emulsion. That's my guess, after spending just a little bit looking at your beautiful creations.
It's awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is again, you know, it helps us with the science. It really helps us to create even better textures, and it's very important. And you know, just really, really lucky that we get this experience to be able to put things under a microscope as well. So yeah, a little bit about white chocolate because I'm just gonna show you the paint as well. So with the white chocolate, we've got the cacao butter, we've got, you know, the sugar and the milk solids. With compound chocolate, you don't have the cacao butter in it. So it's just mostly all oil and milk solids. So chocolate and beeswax, I'll show you a little video. This is how we emulsify it. We heat the beeswax to 65 degrees. And then our chocolate is also about 40 degrees, but our chocolate is really very smooth. And then we're able to emulsify it very quickly. So then after that, we cool it down a little bit, and then we set it into our molds, and then we knock it out. So, drawing. Next, Play-Doh. So I've been it's gonna be at least a few years before even if this product ever comes out of our line of product. But I mean, with all the edible Play-Dohs that are out there, it's very salty. And today, you know, the team was really making the Play-Doh today, and it's super salty because you need that salt. So basically, this is something we did with honey and no salt. So we're gonna pass the Play-Doh around, and then feel free to take it off. I mean, I like to play a lot, so I don't really care if my hands are dirty. So I don't know about you guys, but you can see, this is really not Play-Doh. It's doughy, it's like, ugh, and then it breaks like that, right? But because we didn't add the salt to it. And so let's show the recipe. So that's the recipe without the salt. But let's say if you add the salt to it, right? It's really like Play-Doh. It's like amazing. It's like, you know, look at that. And then it's moist. And but I mean, that again, you know, this is art. This is fun. This is about like creating food experiences for people, and it smells really good. So this, again, you know, we all know that salt preserves, and that's one of the reasons. But we also know that. Oh, okay, great. So yeah, we also know that salt is a terrible. I mean, we need so much salt in this to make it good. And so we need to eliminate that, and I'm still trying to do that. And hopefully this could be a final project as well for one of the students. But it's very interesting with the texture. So we're passing all that around, you can test it. So the darker ones are the ones without the salt, and the lighter ones are like this. But you can see how springy it is. So we have also tried to put it in the freezer and then to defrost it. So we can see, okay, if I need to ship it somewhere else, how do we ship this? We put this in vacuum packs, and we also left a batch outside in the lab today to see how it dries out, because for sure there's going to be a skin over it, it's going to be dry, and then you basically got to use your hands to just make it moist again. But you can see how it leaves almost like a very nice shine to this. So it's nice, yeah, it's a nice texture. I mean, but we're all talking about food and textures today, so I really think you should touch, yeah. But yeah, let me give you this. You can pass it around. So it's a beautiful, beautiful texture. So that's the Play-Doh recipe. But you know, you can find Play-Doh recipes all around with the salt. And then we've got another Play-Doh recipe that we did, but you can see this is with salt. But can you see just how it also just breaks? Because we changed the quantity of water into it as well. So again, everything just plays a big part. For me, that recipe works the best, but it tastes terrible. I don't know if you want to taste it because everybody's hands are on it already, but it's so salty that I literally spat it out. Yeah, so we're still working on it. And I think I know how to do it, but I just know that we have to add a lot of flavoring, which we're trying not to do, to be able to achieve what we want to achieve. And we also always talk about the quality of ingredients that go into our confectionaries. So yeah, that's Play-Doh. But now the whole room smells of chocolate, so it's really nice. So that's Play-Doh for us. And then, okay. So finally, I'm going to paint. This is the last slide. This is it. So we're all going to paint. I'm going to get a few volunteers. Yeah, just come down. I mean, if all of you want to come down, you can just all come down too. Yeah, just come. Like I said, the painting, we can host a lot of people.
I can draw.
You can draw, yeah. And that side. Yeah. So, okay. This is great. This is so great. You can come over here as well. Or like come over this side with everybody. Yeah. Okay, so we'll show the camera. So these are the lollipops that we'll put on after. Yeah. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how we paint. Yep, that's okay. Yeah. So I use a hair dryer usually and a roller. But we use a roller because of a bigger surface. A small surface like this, we use a brush. But I want to show you how reversible this texture is as well. Okay, so I'll paint right here so that you can see it. So, okay, so let's do this. And then, could you pass me one glove? Yeah, something's underneath. So, this is with a little bit of oil, so you can really touch the texture. After it is edible, you can eat it. And then I think everybody should eat chocolate. So like, here you go. So you can taste it. And then you can splash on it. But yeah, so this is gonna be everybody's art. So you can really like splash. You can use your fingers. Oh wow! Look at that. How awesome is that? Yeah. How does that taste? I want to video that. Oh wow! Look at that! Look at that! Oh, this is really awesome. All right. Okay. Well, I'm sure everybody's gonna get a chance to do this. So yeah, you can taste it. You can taste it. Yeah, that's kind of like that strawberry, but so we have the orange one as well, which is like destroyed. That's okay. So maybe we can do the other one. So this is too much. Okay. So this is interesting. This is chocolate, but it's been burnt. So it gives you this texture, right? But for the ones who are daring, you should taste it because it's hot, it's hot, it's hot. Careful, it's really hot. Wow, this is America. You in Japan, no one would come here and touch this. Like, oh my God. Now when you taste that, the burnt chocolate, I mean, it's really hot, but it's tasty, right? So for those who can't, you can just come here. So we'll make space for those who hasn't tried it. It's great. I cannot believe everyone's eating burnt chocolate. We should definitely document this thing. It's okay, I'll do it. Can you help me take video? Okay. Like that. So this is really hot as well, but I'll show you something. So she's like eating everything. That's crazy. So yeah. Now that's peppermint. I don't know how many can reach out to try this, but come over. Okay, so we'll make space for them. Yeah. And come over. So that's peppermint. Can you taste a little bit of the peppermint in there? Yeah. So again.
Are all the colors in white chocolate?
Yes, they are in white chocolate. They're in brown chocolate. There's some in brown chocolate. Yeah. Yeah. That one. The brown is brown.
The brown is brown.
brown is brown,
Anything
yeah.
that's colored.
Color is white. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, like I said, this is awesome. I think you're the first audience to taste burnt chocolate, which is like amazing. But like I said, burnt chocolate, it only looks burnt, but when you taste it, it melts. So there's something to do again with the science. I mean, it's completely like, the fat is completely like separated and everything, but when you taste it, the mouthfeel is still really good. You guys tasted this? Yeah, okay. So I wanted to show you how we paint, but everyone's eating. So basically, so again, we use a lot of the heat gun because chocolate is a reversible paint, which allows me to actually just heat it up and then just paint over it. Another way that we paint is really using the heat and just making it really, really smooth. So I'll do it in front of the camera, but you can see that basically we can actually make this really, really, really smooth. Okay, so that's one of the techniques that we do. Again, just with the back of my palm, and I make the whole board smooth, for example. Really, really at it. Like, it's awesome. So, do you want a bowl or something? No?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So, but it's tasty. I mean, it's great. And you know, later I'm going to leave the crayons there. You can draw all you want, and you can all eat the paper as well. But you should really you should really try to eat the paper. So I'll kind of like just maybe pass this around. Here you go. It's rice wafer paper. So there you go. So tear and share. I think like tear and share. But this is really awesome. So we've got kind of like everybody's art here. Are you guys happy with the painting? So. So I'm just gonna paint a little bit more, but go for it. Go for it. Paint and eat.
That's a great idea.
That's the whole point.
She's dipping the chocolate in that. That's crazy. This is awesome. That's great. Okay, cool. How is the paper? How's the taste of that? It's great. Great. Yeah. Rice Krispies. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So kind of like for those who hasn't had a chance, just come over, and I don't know if you managed to taste the. Yeah. Go ahead. It's really nice.
Totally. It's just good.
Yeah. So this is, like I said, a very small one, but imagine a big one. We have to manage the temperature very well. So for those who had the first-hand experience in painting, you can really see that it sets very fast. So you got to work really fast and quick. And then also the way we merge the colors together, there's also another technique for that. But that's, again, altogether something different. Yeah. I will give you a pot later. So I'm going to get the volunteers' help. We're going to start sticking these lollipops. And then those who are up here, you can enjoy the lollipop later when we hang it on the wall. So, like I said, this is something really simple. But I thought this would be a nice experience for everybody to enjoy as a little buffet. Unfortunately, we don't have 350 lollipops. So, yeah, you can help me with this too. Yeah, we'll get some people to help me. Here, you can stick the lollipops first. Yeah. Don't eat it yet. Yes.
Trying to.
Okay, you can eat that one. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Extra seasoning.
Yeah.
Sorry. Does the painting ever go bad?
Not really.
Well, that would. She said they're pre-made holes, isn't it? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Okay, 3 more. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, over there. Yeah.
Okay, 2 more.
Okay. Thank you.
Last one.
Yeah. Oh, they're over here. They're over there.
Can I give you one more?
Do you want me to help you?
All right.
Sorry. See, there are 2 here.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna lift this up and put it onto something. Okay. All right, I have one more here. Just one more here. So, all right. So I don't know if your parents told you never to play with food, but I thoroughly encourage you guys to play with your food because it just sparks imagination and it sparks creativity. That's awesome. See, so I mean, for me, it's all about smell, taste, feel, and really getting it dirty, but it's so much fun. And I had so much fun today with you guys. So I'm gonna still be here to draw and paint with you for a while, but we're gonna lift this up and then we're gonna hang it somewhere.
She hangs it.
You will? Oh, okay.
Oh, I couldn't know.
Oh, wow, she's got it. Okay,
Where's Patricia?
this is everybody's art. Okay. Oh, Patricia's very strong. Oh, nice.
So everybody,
Okay. Wonderful.
let's thank Janice. She's going to still be here, but let's thank her. A couple of announcements. There will be an unannounced public lecture next Monday. We actually have somebody who was a graduate of this class who was a near finalist on Top Chef. He's coming to tell us about his experience. He was really intrigued. He made his own special class, his own curriculum at Harvard about food and science. So he's going to give a lecture on Monday. And after this, there will be a book signing by Janice at the back. Wave your hand at the back there. But let's clap one more time for this art.